It's time for East Coast Hustle with your host, Reba Magulik. Brought to you by GovTech, your government technology insurance company. Check them out at govtechinsurance.com. And by Accelerate Solutions, providing enterprise security, digital transformation, and strategic consulting.
Hi, I'm Reba Magulik, and welcome to East Coast Hustle. Have you ever wondered what it's like to have a near-death experience, to literally fight for your life, and how it would change you? Well, let's find out. On October 25th, 2011, on a teaching mission, Jessica and a male colleague were kidnapped at gunpoint and held for ransom by an organized band of Somali pirates. For 93 days, Jessica was terrorized by 24 captors demanding millions of dollars. Held captive in the open desert in filthy conditions on a starvation diet, hallucinating from pain, her health steadily deteriorated. So right here on our show, right now, let me introduce Jessica Buchanan. Wow. Jessica, and I thought COVID was tough.
It was tough.
It's such a pleasure to have you here today. We are so honored and so excited. So many questions for you, but can you start? We just want to hear from you. Tell us the details of what occurred. What led up to those moments? What happened during that time and what you thought would happen later?
Sure. So I'm a teacher by profession, and it was my dream to travel to Africa and to teach, and so I ended up teaching at an international school in 2007. I met my husband shortly after I started, and I was working in Nairobi, Kenya, and we fell in love and got married, and I did what all newlywed wives do. I followed him up to Somalia, where he was based. So I quit my teaching job, relocated up to Hargeisa, actually Somaliland, and because I'm a teacher, I can always find work, so I started tutoring and teaching English to refugees living on our compound. And that was, fun. And then I started working for the UN and doing various things, and finally landed on a job with the Danish Demining Group, which was the Mine Action Unit of the Danish Refugee Council. So it's an international NGO, and basically I used my educational skill set to help them develop their education programs in community safety and armed violence reduction.
Okay.
So we worked in communities that were really recovering from civil war and had leftover explosives and things. You'll find that in a lot of different places in the world. Lots of organizations, like mine clearance organizations, will go in and they'll clean up and take care of leftover landmines or UXOs that hadn't exploded. But the components that I worked in were basically to train our staff to go out and inform communities, hey, if you see something shiny, especially the kids, if you see something shiny on the ground, don't pick it up because it could blow up.
How frightening.
Kids would end up blind, maimed,
Oh my goodness.
Are, third world countries, right, where there's not a lot of access to medical care and whatnot.
Sure.
So I was hashtag living my best life. I had a job that was really meaningful.
And very unique, I might add. Because just even before you've even gotten into the story of the kidnapping, this alone, the fact that you went out there, did this, fell in love. How many people in your neighborhood that you grew up with were doing what you were doing? You're probably
not a lot.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating path to begin with, which is what I find interesting. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think that's what I wanted, right?
Yeah,
I wanted to
go off the beaten path a little bit.
I grew up fairly traditionally. I'm from the Midwest originally. I grew up in the church, very religious, and so there were lots of
mission
boxes,
groups and things?
Yeah, things that I felt like I had to fit into all the time. And I got married really young, and that was a terrible experience. And I think after I got on the other side of that, I went back to school, got my degree. And it was this sense of there's this big, huge, wide world out there, and I want to see everything and experience all of it, and no one's going to hold me back, right?
But how brave of you to take that step. Because people talk about it, but not many people actually do that.
Brave and dumb, right? That's the innocence of youth.
Yes.
You think that you're invincible. You don't. I think back to some of the decisions that I made and the situations that I really was spared you know, until, so I'm working for the DDG, and this is 2011, and I had now become the regional education advisor. So I traveled like all over East Africa, South Sudan, Kenya, Rwanda, like loved it. It was so great. And I had been called upon to do a training down in the southern part of Somalia, in Galkayo. Not super safe. UN was operating.
Did you know that? Did you know it wasn't super safe?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, we had, like, security protocols that we had to follow. We had advisors who were based in Nairobi who, like, read the reports and decided whether or not it was safe enough for you to go in. And, you know, I followed all of those security measures, but I didn't feel good about the trip.
Interesting.
Yeah, I canceled it twice, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And so the third time it came up, I had organized with my colleague, Paul, Danish gentleman, who was running the operations down in this field office, and I called him up a couple days before I was supposed to go down there, and I said, I don't feel good about this. I don't want to go. And, like, can we figure something out? I have money in my budget. Let me bring your staff up to Hargeisa, like, you know, whatever. And he was just like, no, like, you need to get down here. This is your job. If you don't do this, I'm going to report you to your supervisor, and you're going to lose your job.
Good gracious.
So essentially bullied. Right?
I'd love to hear at the end of this what you said to him at the end of all
I've
this.
got a whole lot to say. But, you know, and I'm like, I've got this really cool job. It's very competitive in that field.
To get that spot?
It's really hard to get jobs like this, you know?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you want to work in international development and you want, like, project-based experience, like, this is hard to come by. So I'm scared that, you know, I'm being bullied, workplace bullying.
That's horrific.
I'm scared that I'm going to lose my job. So my husband didn't feel good.
And this is a safety situation. I mean, this is a safety issue. Yeah.
Right?
They didn't send anybody with you?
Well, I was with him. So I fly from Hargeisa. I take like a UN. This is how this whole world works, or it did then. You know, you get on a UN flight. I go to Galkayo. I get picked up by a convoy. We had two offices. It's really hard to explain. Read the book, I guess, if you want to understand the nuances of a place like Galkayo. But essentially it's separated by two different clans, and there's this green line that runs in the middle of the town between the two territories, and there's all this conflict. So we had a north office and a south office. I was staying in the north office, but and we did training there for 2 days, and then the third day we were supposed to go to the south office, and that was the part that I was really nervous about. And so Paul and I, we were friends. You know, we worked together in Hargeisa, and we were hanging out like the night before we were supposed to go to the south office for the training that we were going to do, and he played the guitar, and I like to sing, so we would like, you know, there's not a whole lot to do in Galkayo, so we like drink too much.
You try to entertain,
and, you know, you entertain. And I went to bed that night like really late, and I had these horrible nightmares like all night long. And I'm not one of those people that dreams or like remembers my dreams.
Right.
Like, that's not me. But I had nightmares all night long that we were being, like, our compound was being overtaken by pirates.
Stop it. So you had a premonition about this.
Oh.
Have you had premonitions prior to this?
Not like this. Not like this. And this is so interesting. And this is really just a part of this my story that I've really started talking about recently, and just, like, in the last couple of years.
Okay.
I think it's taken me a while to, like, figure out how to talk about it. And I got up that morning, October 25th, 2011, and I got up out of bed, and I remember going to the bathroom in my room at the guest house, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said out loud to myself, Jess, do you want to do this?
No. Are you serious? That gives me chills. It's like you knew.
I knew. My intuition
Something inside
was
you,
screaming, like sending flares, smoke signals, like don't do this. But here's what we do, right? Like what? And I'm standing there looking at myself, thinking, no, I don't want to do this, but I'm here. Everybody's expecting me to do this.
Yes.
Everything's been organized.
I made the trip.
My staff is waiting for me. I have to show solidarity. I made the trip. Like, what am I going to do? Go down there and say, okay, so I had this dream.
Yeah. How do you explain it?
Who does that?
Yeah.
Well, smart people do that because I walked away from myself. Like, I walked away from that my reflection in the mirror, and it was the single most important act of self-abandonment that I have ever, like, ever done in my entire life, and it changed the course of my life. I almost died, like on multiple occasions, and I just learned something last night actually that I'll get to in a minute in terms of like almost losing my life. But it was such self-abandonment.
I've never heard that term. That's interesting. Self-abandonment.
Yeah.
That's what you recognize it as now.
Yeah.
Not in that moment, obviously.
Because now, I mean, we'll get to that. Like, that's been my journey, right? Like, that's what my next book is about. Like, that journey from self-abandonment to self-love. Because it really is this, like, it's a lack of love and belief in yourself. To deny yourself even the most basic, like, safety.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I go down, I get in the convoy, we go across the green line, everything's fine, do our training. It's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A convoy of 3 Land Cruisers picks us up. We've got armed guards in the front, armed guards in the back.
Sounds like a perfectly safe situation so far.
Razak, our security advisor, who's a local guy, he's been making calls and like, oh no, we gotta wait. And I felt like, this is taking a while, but I didn't know because I didn't know him, and I defaulted to Paul. He made the decisions. We get in the vehicles and we leave the compound. We drive for like 10 minutes through Galkayo, and all of a sudden another vehicle, like a Land Cruiser, comes around on the right side of us and gets in between the lead vehicle and us and splashes mud up all over the windows and the windshield.
Oh,
and
I
can't see anything. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, I was on my phone, like, sending emails.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in work mode still.
Right.
And I'm like, what a jerk who drives like that, right? Right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I hear the crack of the butt of an AK-47 on the car hood. And then just a bunch of angry men surround us, and they're screaming. And then the Abdi Razak, the security official, he is sitting next to me. I'm in the back. His door is pulled open. He's pulled out of the car. And then a very angry man in a police uniform gets in next to me. He's got an AK-47. He points it at my head and screams at the driver to drive.
Oh my gosh.
And so we just take off through town. There's the Somali driver. I don't know who he is. He looks scared. He's driving like crazy. Like
is Paul in the car with you too?
Yes. So he's like in the passenger side because the steering wheel's on the right. He's here in front of me. He's in the front seat. And we are driving like bats out of hell. The car's up on 2 wheels. It slams down. Like, I'm thinking we're going to get in a car accident. We're just going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, I don't know who this is. I don't know where they're taking us. Like, and I'm at one point still believing that maybe we're just being carjacked. Like, maybe, because
they just want
that's
the car.
common, and that, they want your jewelry and your passport and your money, and they're going to take all your stuff and then just
leave you
on the side of the road. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Right.
And at one point, I remember Paul turning around to me to, I think, check on me, and I just whispered to him, like, what is happening?
So you guys were probably frozen with fear. Like, you couldn't even speak at that point to your...
No.
What did he say?
He looked at me, like, and he felt really sorry for me, and he said, we're being kidnapped.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just like, I have no frame of reference for this. Like,
exactly.
Nothing in my life, no training, no heat training, no security, like, nothing I have ever read or experience has ever prepared me for this.
Right.
I have no idea what to do.
What was going through your mind in that moment?
I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an aid worker. Like, I'm here to work in these communities to help keep people
You're not like
safe.
a millionairess that showed up flashing jewels.
I'm just a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't have anything. Like, what? And at this point, we don't know. Like, are they Islamic extremists? Like, are they Al-Shabaab? Like, is this an ideological thing? Like,
did you recognize their language?
I mean, it's Somali, and I've been living there for, at this point, 2.5 years. So, but I'm not anywhere near, like, even, like, fluent or anything. So I can hear, like, the word American. I can hear, like, and it's very forceful. They sound very angry. Also, they're chewing chat, which is like a a leaf, like a narcotic.
Oh, okay.
And it's very cultural, very common. And but it hypes you up and makes you really paranoid. So you all of a sudden are surrounded by all these men with guns
who are angry and high.
They're angry. They're all amped up because we're running from something, and they've got 2 hostages. Good Lord. So they drive, we drive for hours. We stop. We change personnel. We drive some more. We stop. We change vehicles. And then at some point in the middle of the night, they stop just in some, what looks to me like arbitrary place in the desert, and they force us out of the vehicles.
Did you at any point in this think, let me just make a run for it?
No.
Okay.
No. There was no opportunity for that. I mean, there are 4 or 5 vehicles. This is a caravan.
Uh-huh.
There are probably 50 to 60 heavily armed men, wearing just bands of ammo, machine guns, Kalashnikov. I mean, explosives.
Good gracious.
It's like they're going to war.
Wow.
And then one of them, the one sitting next to me, he says, walk. Mm-hmm. Out into the desert. Mm-hmm. And I it's so dark. There are no stars. There's no moon. And I'm just no.
You said no?
No. I'm not doing that.
Wow.
Because I'm they're gonna gang rape me. They're gonna kill. No.
Yeah.
You can shoot me right here. That's.
I would rather die this way.
No.
Yeah.
And he's walk, and we're in this exchange, right? And Paul finally comes over to me, and he takes my hand and he says, Jessica, we have to walk. And I mean, it is the most terrifying. It's like a death march, right? Because you have no idea what you're walking into. I can't see anything. I'm falling over bushes and rocks, and I'm picking myself back up. And I remember at one point feeling I had cut myself, and I felt blood running down my leg, right?
Oh my gosh.
But I thought, this is good.
Why?
This is good because I can still feel pain, and that means I'm still alive.
You weren't sure if you were alive?
No, I mean, it was such a surreal,
I was going to say,
shocking, out of body. I get chills just now, retelling it. And I mean, I've told this story 6 gazillion times at this point, but to be in that moment where you're walking to what I believed, I mean, it felt like I was walking to my own execution.
Your death march,
yeah. And I'm saying goodbye to my husband. I'm saying goodbye to my father. My mother had passed away the year before.
Oh, my.
And I just was calling out to her, in my mind, and asking, please help me be strong, help me be dignified. I didn't want to beg.
Did you say really dignified?
Important.
Yeah, you prayed for...
in my mind, I'm help me not be this. I don't know. I just didn't want to be
this fragile person.
Yes, begging for my. I wanted to be strong and powerful at the end of my life.
Jessica,
I have no idea why that mattered to me, but it did.
That says a million things about you. I just think anybody else in that moment, dignified is not the first thing that would come to my mind. God, please just help me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there
Mom,
was a
help
lot
me,
of that.
save my life.
There was a lot
but
of
to
that.
do it with dignity, that just says something very key about your core fiber to me.
I think we just don't know. Until we're faced.
You don't know what you're made of.
Death, right? No, and I think that is one of my larger themes from all of this is that, now I can see that this whole experience, surviving all of this, is such a baseline for me, and I think that a
baseline, how so?
In terms of you know how we often say we shouldn't let our we shouldn't let our traumas define us.
Right.
And I think that we absolutely should let them define us because
that's interesting.
Let this define me because now I have this as a baseline to be look what I did.
Yeah.
Look what I survived.
Right.
Look what I overcame. No one can mess with me now.
That's right.
Right.
What could
we all have
yeah.
something like that.
Yes.
Right. We all have something in our life that we've survived, and if you haven't survived it, you will. I promise you, because no one escapes the human condition unscathed. So I'm walking. I'm asking my mom for help. All of these things, and then they stop us and then tell us to get down on our knees.
So you're thinking at this point they're gonna shoot
executed. Or for some reason, I think in my terror, it looked like they had bayonets attached to the end of their. And I'm thinking this is Braveheart style, like I'm gonna be decapitated, and I don't understand I'm 32 years old. I didn't have children. Like, what I didn't, like
all the
what
things
did
you
I
didn't
do?
get. Yeah. Why don't I hear?
All of this stuff going through my mind, and I mean, it's the single most terrifying moment of my life so far. And then one of them says, "Sleep, sleep, like lay down in the dirt and go to sleep."
Did it seem as if this was their plan all along? Do you think, okay, so there wasn't like a moment where maybe they suddenly took some kind of mercy on you on the transport over there?
No, they wanted
that was their plan all along.
Scare us.
Okay.
Because they wanted to control us.
Okay.
And I'm, at this point, like, I don't think anybody had any idea how long this thing was going to take. Like 93 days was, the period of time that I spent out there with them, which is actually a really short time for captivity. Like,
is it?
It's very short.
What's the normal time for captivity?
There's no normal time, but for reference, there was a German-American named Michael Scott Moore who was actually taken the week before my rescue in the same area. He was held for over 900 days. So.
And it's just about money?
Just about money.
But why you two?
We were trafficked, essentially. So Abdi Razak, that guy that was sitting next to me that kept making all those phone calls,
he sold you guys out.
He sold us for $100,000.
Oh my goodness! And did they just believe that they would be able to collect millions?
So the thing about this is that it's a network. It's like the mob.
Okay.
So they have like people in the UK. They have diaspora here in the US. Like they have all of these webs of financiers and operators, and the guys on the ground that were holding us, they were just that. They were just guards. They weren't involved in any kind of strategy.
They probably didn't even know why. Just following orders.
$20 a day and cigarettes in their chat, and in a country where I don't know, like a lot of people subsist on less than $1 a day, and at the time the average life expectancy was 46 years. I mean, if somebody is going to offer you $20 a day, like that's not bad.
That's not bad.
And if you're not mean to me, then what? No harm, no foul.
Right. So what happened after that?
So I fell asleep.
How could you even sleep?
I think
I guess you're exhausted.
Your mind
from
is amazing.
Okay.
It just shut down. Because it knew I needed to reserve, right? And so I passed out for a couple of hours. I woke up the next morning and thought, oh wow, okay, I'm in hell. Like this is my own personal hell.
Did you have a chance to eat, use the bathroom, anything?
I mean, I remember somebody that first day dropping off like a little package of cookies.
Okay.
Water, no one gave us water. It rained, so I remember trying to
They didn't give you any water.
Drink rainwater.
My goodness. Was Paul with you the whole time?
He was not with the whole time. He was with me at that point. The lots of times we were separated as punishment. Like negotiations weren't moving quickly enough, or things weren't moving in the right direction, so they would pull us apart. Sometimes I was okay with it. Sometimes I needed him and I needed somebody to talk to. He told me on day 27 that there was actually a direct kidnapping threat on the company that he had not told me about because he didn't want me to cancel the trip and he didn't consider it a viable threat.
Have you forgiven him?
No.
I cannot even imagine. I'm furious
people
hearing
always
this.
think I'm so angry with the pirates and the kidnappers.
You're more angry at him.
I'm angry at him and my organization because the duty of care, the neglect of duty of care.
How terrible.
Yeah.
And you multiple times expressed your concerns.
Right, and that's the thing. That's the crux of my message too, is you have to, no one will protect you. You have to protect yourself.
Exactly. Listen to that voice.
You have to do what's best for you.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Don't worry about
what anybody else says.
It might mess up somebody's schedule, but who cares?
Matter.
Yes.
It's your life. It's your career. It's your hopes and your, whatever. Your kid. It doesn't matter. You don't owe anybody an explanation. No, period, is a complete sentence.
Wow. I love that. Sometimes I feel like as women, that's hard for us.
I'm on a mission to change that.
I love that. No, I mean, everything happens for a reason, as we were talking about earlier before we started recording. I'm sure you've thought about this, but from my perspective, I'm like, you're here all of this happened to you so that you could help someone else, improve someone else's life. But please continue. What happened over the? Did you think you were going to be there forever? Like, what was the day-to-day like? Did you befriend any of these people? How did you survive?
Yeah, I think the first couple of weeks I thought, oh, we're going to wrap this thing up, right? Like, we're aid workers.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the community. Like, surely the community still want us because, you know, we brought supplies and money and training and jobs into these communities.
But Jessica, I think that says something about you. Like, this is what we talk when we talk about the hustle and the cloth that you're cut from. I can easily see people not thinking through the logics of what you just said. Like, you were still, to me, that was still a glass half full perspective. I can just imagine folks being like, oh, it's over. I'm dying, everything's over, you know, for you to even
I'm definitely
hang
like
on to that positive thread.
Person because
for sure
you just like have, I don't know, like you just have to be like, I mean,
you're designed that way.
I think so, but it's practice too. Like if you would ask my husband, he would probably say that. But, I think it's mindset, and I have never had to employ a positive mindset the way I did during my captivity. Like, you know, like probably 45 days in, we were driven out into the desert, propped up in front of a camera, forced to make a proof of life video.
I saw that video.
Yeah. And
oh my God.
Like surreal, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my God, this is like, you see these things on the BBC.
And you're like, I'm here.
Yeah. Like, this might be the last time my husband ever sees me alive.
Oh.
Like, all over the news, right? And I think after that, I was like, oh, okay, we're in this for the long haul. Like, this is, like, this is not, and I knew my company had KNR, like, kidnapping and ransom insurance. So, you know, I'm like, Thanksgiving rolls around and nothing happens, and Christmas rolls around, and you're like, surely people care about Christmas. They want us to buy Christmas. But it turns out insurance companies don't care about Christmas. So, you know, the ransom demand started at $45 million.
$45 million?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you don't even know. Like, these guys, they didn't even know. They couldn't even write the number 7 in the sand, right? Like, it doesn't, it's so ambiguous. And then our people countered with 20,000.
Okay.
So
20,000?
20,000. Like,
talk about a wide.
So that gives you an indicator of like how long are we going to be out here? Like a really long time.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, we weren't taken to a house. We weren't taken to a shelter. We lived outside. Like, I sat under trees and bushes, and I'm like an outdoorsy girl. Like, I'm a campy girl, but I mean, this
was the weather conducive to this sort of thing?
No, I mean, it's hot in the desert during the day. Like, I mean, my lips were cracked and bleeding. My eyes were swollen shut. I was sunburnt. You know, even sitting under a tree, like they're acacia trees, they're thorn trees. Like, there's not a lot of foliage to protect you.
Yeah.
And then you'd sleep out in the open at night, and so then you'd wake up wet because of the dew, like soaking wet. Like, there's nothing that puts me in a worse mood than waking up wet.
Oh yeah.
Not a good feeling.
Were you able to shower? Were you able to?
Every couple of days, I would get like some dirty diesel-laced water to try to wash with.
Oh gosh.
So then that's the other thing is like I'm the only woman.
Right.
Living amongst dozens of men.
How frightening. That, I mean, that's the scariest thing, I think.
You know, and I ended up like learning, and I mean, I still do this. Like, I still sleep like this, like on my stomach, you know, trying to protect myself. And I had such horrible, like, sleep was my only escape. But it was also not like
a scary
true
time
escape because I was so vulnerable when I was sleeping.
Yeah.
I was vulnerable when I was washing. You know, I would try to get to the nearest furthest bush.
Yes.
Fortunately, I did befriend a couple of them.
I was just going to ask you. I have to believe that that's part of this story.
Well, so it's so interesting because I met somebody recently who, you know, I meet like lots of people, especially being based in the DC area, that had like something to do with it, or they were like
tangentially somehow
like,
involved.
Or they know someone. Yeah. This happens a lot. And this person relayed, and I can't say how they know, but they knew. They had been watching in my interactions with my captors, and they actually use it as a case study for like some courses that they teach.
Really?
On how to build rapport.
How to build rapport based on that?
Yeah, and I was like, can you like what did I do? Like how did I do that? And I always say that connection is my superpower.
Yeah.
Like I'm deeply authentic.
Yes.
And I love people so much.
Yes.
And I love connecting with people.
Yes. I think we have this in common.
Yes, I think obviously, I think so, right? Well, it was so interesting because this person was like that ability to connect.
Mm-hmm. Even in such a circumstance.
Yes, saved your life.
Oh, I'm
sure. There were so many times where they were just going to kill you because this thing was taking way too long and it was getting way too dangerous for them. They were just going to kill you. But the couple that you connected with, like a couple of the pirates that you connected with and you built a rapport and actually formed a friendship with, they were like, no, you can't do that.
They became your defenders.
Yes. And it saved our lives.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was like, I knew connection was my superpower, right? Like,
it really
but to
is.
hear something like that, you're like, I mean, it was like I called my sister. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, what do I do with this? And she was like, oh, Jess, you know, of course. I'm like, of course. So yeah, like connecting. I think it's interesting because I'm like thinking about that as a truth, as a concept, like connection saves lives.
It does. At the end of the day, we're all humans.
Look at COVID.
Yes.
Right? And how that disconnect.
Right.
How hard, that was the hardest part of the whole thing, is not being able to connect
exactly.
in person, right? And so if I've learned anything, it's that power of connection.
Totally.
And so yeah, I mean, it did. It saved my life on many accounts that I don't even know about.
But what about Paul? Did Paul have that same superpower?
No, he didn't.
So it really was your superpower that shielded both of you.
And I would get so irritated with him because he just didn't seem to be able to watch and intuit like when to ask for like an extra can of tuna. Or,
you know what this is? This is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. It's just, sometimes I feel like you either have it or you don't. You can't read a room. Of course, in our world, we apply it to sales and business development and getting your message across to a customer. This is an extreme example, but I love that you called it a superpower. It freaking saved your life.
Yeah. Well, and it can also build your business.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I do employ those tactics when I'm working with clients.
Yeah.
Or when I'm making a sale with a client because
100%.
Now I'm an entrepreneur. So,
and what you said about loving people, it's funny. I always say that too. I'm like, I don't have to fake it. I actually love people, and I actually find them very interesting, and I'll always give them, the benefit of the doubt. One day it might burn me, but until then, I think it's really been a secret to success because they can feel it.
Yes.
100%. And they open up to you maybe more than they would open up to the next person in line that walks into their office.
People know if you're being authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. And connection, again, whether or not you're aware of it, you connect.
Right.
Right? And so the best way to make a sale or to form a relationship with a client is to just show up in conviction. I mean, you can be, trust me, you cannot hold space for more conviction than someone who has been held who's being held hostage.
Oh my.
Right? Like, I'm going to be passionate about that connection because I want to live.
Absolutely.
So, I think that it does translate very well into the business world.
We'll be back with more East Coast Hustle with your host, Reba Magulick, after this brief timeout.
For all of my friends in the government contracting business, I want to tell you about a company I know well, led by one of our guests on East Coast Hustle, Kevin Fitzpatrick at GovTech. Kevin and his team are experts in liability issues that face the GovCon industry.
Now back to East Coast Hustle with your host, Reba Magulick, and today's special guest, Jess Buchanan.
Two things. Do you miss these people? Like, do you feel for them? Do you pray for them? I mean, or is that like a step too far?
No, I don't think so. Like, I carried around a lot of guilt for a long time.
Guilt? Why?
Well, I mean, fast forward, so I'm there for 93 days. I actually get a kidney infection.
Oh
Like
my.
a urinary tract infection turns into a kidney infection.
Oh
they won't
my
bring me
God,
medicine.
that's
They won't bring
serious.
a doctor. It's very serious.
You poor thing.
And my last proof of life call was January 16th, 2012. I'd had a series of 6 calls to the company, like to the organization, and they had like a point person, like a family communicator that I would talk to. And
Okay.
I said, look, I'm super sick. I'm like high fever. They're not giving me anything. I need an IV. I need to be hospitalized. You know, because I've been living in dirt for the last, 80 days.
Jessica,
Like,
gracious.
you have to get me out of
Yeah.
here or I'm going to die. So, that was the last time I talked to anybody. I had no idea that set the wheels in motion.
But that makes me so sad. Like, why weren't they working hard anyway? Like, I guess they were. But why?
But it's just like.
I mean, like,
so
that's what it
complicated.
took. It just seems.
Well, it does. I mean, yeah. Like, and again, like, as an American citizen, people don't know, and they don't. I mean, I had no idea that a military intervention was even something that happens. Like, I don't think most people know that. And there had been a couple of attempts at a rescue that I wasn't aware of, but just didn't happen because
They don't
all of the
inform you.
stars have to be aligned. Like, this is such a technical, complicated, layered endeavor.
Yes.
And because, loss of life, of course, is like the most serious effect that can happen if things are not executed precisely. And then, like, loss of life of the hostage, and generally that is what happens. Like, a military intervention will take place, and then the captors will shoot the hostage.
Oh my.
So that there's nothing left.
No collateral. Yeah. That's horrific. So it's a lose-lose situation.
And I mean, these, our military is incredible. Like, they know what they're doing. And so that set the wheels in motion, unbeknownst to me and Paul, or our families, or our organization for that matter, for a military rescue. And so January 25th, 2012, I went to bed that night, on my mat out in the middle, and I'm just like, I'm so sick. And I remember saying, there were 2 stars that would come out at the same time every night. They were like big and beautiful and bright. And I named one for my mother. So I would talk to her like every night, and I'd be like, well, nothing happened today, but maybe tomorrow, And this night, it was different because I was like, I need you to go and tell God that He needs to do something, because I'm not going to make it out of here. And while I miss you, I'm like, I'm not ready for this to be over. And so I went to sleep. I woke up a few hours later, sick. Say the word toilet, which is how I was excused from my mat. That was the only word that would get me off my mat. And there were 9 guys on the ground that night, but they were all out, passed out. And there was always one that was alert and keeping guard over the camp. And I couldn't get anybody to rouse. So I go to a bush, do what I need to do, and come back, roll myself up in my blanket, get, in my blanket like this. And I can hear something like an animal or something coming through the grass, like we're in scrubby, brushy grass. And I'm thinking, it's these beetles that would come out at night.
Gosh.
And they get my hair.
Beetles on top of everything else.
And they get my hair and my clothes, and I'm not in the mood, can't do this right now. I'm shaking my blanket. I'm I keep getting up and down. I can't find anything. I don't see anything, but I hear it. And I finally give up, right? Because I'm fighting for my life. I need to sleep. And there's the pirate on my left. He slept next to me most nights when he was there. His name was Dair. I called him Helper. I had nicknames. He had nicknames for everybody. And he was my friend. And he, 30 seconds after I settle back in, he gets up and he's holding an AK. And I can't see him because now the stars, everything has clouded over. There's no moon. And I can tell he's terrified.
That's interesting.
And he's screaming at the guys to get up, and I'm like, God,
what's going on? Yeah.
And then the night just erupts into automatic gunfire, and it's just boom, 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 boom.
And you're right there in the middle of it.
There, I'm like, oh my God, 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 what's happening? Oh my God, oh my God, and I'm just trying to disappear down into the ground under my blanket, and Dair hits the ground. all of their route, they're hitting the ground, they're moaning, they're calling out for their mothers, dying, and I'm just oh my God, waiting for a bullet to hit me, thinking we're being kidnapped by another group because that was always a risk. And then somebody starts grabbing my leg and my shoulders. And I'm like trying to
resist.
Yeah, I'm trying to protect myself, and they pull the blanket away from my face. And I can't see anything. I can tell that there are like all these black figures around me, but I can't see what it is. And I'm so scared.
You poor thing. I cannot even imagine.
Yeah. And then I hear this voice, and he's got an American accent, and he knows my name.
First time you've heard that in a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he says, Jessica, it's okay. We're the American military. We're here to rescue you, and we're going to take you home.
Oh my gosh. So what was going through your head at that moment?
Oh, I mean, shock. I start shaking, like convulsing, like shaking.
Like this is really happening.
Like I can't, and all I can say over and over again is, you're American? You're American? You're American, like, because I'm like, oh my God, like, how did they find it?
You're also so sick at this point. You're feverish.
Like, weak,
yeah.
You know, I didn't know at that point, you know, I mean, this was 10 years, like, I think when I came out, I weighed 119 pounds.
Oh my.
You know, and I'm like almost 6 feet tall.
You're tall,
so,
yeah. That's...
So just like nothing to me left, and he takes his mask off, and I can see his face, and he says, you know, we've been watching you for a really long time. We know how sick you've been. And he has like medication. He has a bottle of clean water. Another one of them says, like, do you know where your shoes are? I'm like, I don't know where my shoes are. And he's like, okay, well, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to throw you over my shoulder. We're going to like get to a safer, like, this is not safe. We have to get to another location. And he picks me up, throws me over his shoulder, takes off running, and I'm like bouncing. Like, and all I can think is, I'm a school teacher from Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, how is this my life?
Right. What's happening? This sounds like a movie.
What is this?
Yeah.
It's totally a movie.
Oh my gosh.
And he puts me down at some point, like, that's safe, and Paul's there, and I, you know.
Could you see the pirates that had been shot?
I didn't.
So you, because I'm sure you've never heard or seen anything like that before outside of the movies, but I'm sure that would have been devastating too, but you've had so many years to unpack this. Gosh, such trauma. And
but
look
I mean,
at you.
like, I think that's to your point about like feeling bad about them. Like, it is hard to reconcile. You know, I sat there and thought about it a lot because I had nothing but time, and you know, like, nothing is ever black and white. Like, things get gray really, really fast.
Okay.
And you know, I came in as a humanitarian aid worker, as a teacher, like a military intervention. While I'm grateful for it, and I'm so happy to be here and alive, it wasn't anybody's first choice. You know, I would, like, these men, bad men, made bad decisions, but at the end of the day, they're human beings who were born into a life that I could never understand, with zero resources and children to feed and sick kids, and you know, like, who am I to say that if I had been born then that I wouldn't have done the same thing? Like, I have 2 kids. Like,
so you have zero judgment, it sounds like.
I mean,
it's hard to judge.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Until you've walked a mile in their shoes, as they say.
Yeah, it is. And so I carried around, like, who am I? Like, my privilege, like, you know, my white girl privilege to like survive and be rescued, and you know, and 9 people.
Oh, you had survivor's guilt?
I had a lot of survivor's guilt.
Interesting.
Yeah, and thank God, all of the men and the SEALs. Well, so it was, you know, Paul's like, do you know who these guys are, right? And I'm like, no. And he's like, this is SEAL Team 6. Like, these are the guys that got Osama bin Laden. And I'm like,
praise God.
I don't really know what to do with that. You know, but there was no loss of life on the American side, which is like unbelievable.
Seriously.
Right? But there were nine people that died that night.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, it's like it's a success, but there's also, how do you, depending on how you look at it.
That's hard. And not everybody wants to hear that, but it's my story, and that's I finally have figured out how to tell that story, because for a long time I told it in a way that everybody else wanted to hear it, and it's taken me a long time to figure out
how you want to tell it.
Yeah, where like the role that I play in all of it. So, which is important.
Absolutely.
We'll be back with more East Coast Hustle with your host Reba Magulick after this brief timeout.
On this show, I never promote executive leaders and companies that I don't know well. My friends and colleagues at Accelerate Solutions are truly gifted experts across the company's 3 service areas: enterprise security, digital transformation, and strategic consulting. Accelerate optimizes efficiency and effectiveness and enhances the security of America's physical and cyber infrastructure, as well as personnel. Agencies as large, complex, and important as the FBI depend on Accelerate. To learn more, visit acceleratesolutions.com. That's XCELERATE solutions.com.
Now back to East Coast Hustle with your host, Reba Magulick, and today's special guest, Jess Buchanan.
So tell us about where you are today. What are you doing now? What is your life today? You've reintegrated back into society, or have you, or will you ever? And what's your message? What's your message to people?
Well, it's really good right now.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm happy to hear that.
On this side, right?
Fabulous.
But it's been 10 years, and I have fought tooth and nail to, I call the part after the trauma, and I don't think we talk about it enough. It's called surviving survival.
Interesting.
You know? So, like, it's kind of easy to survive the trauma, right? Because all you have to do is just stay alive, like in my case.
Right. That's interesting.
Like, it's not easy, but, like, I knew I had one job to do, and that was to survive. And then you get thrown back into life, and it's like, oh, I've lost my profession. I got pregnant with my son 2 weeks after the rescue.
Oh, my.
Like, the book is called Impossible Odds, but that is the impossible odds, right? So then I'm thrown into motherhood. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, how do you rebuild after everything? You've gotten to keep your life, your physical life, and you're so I'm so grateful, but everything else, I had to leave Africa because my anxiety was so
intense.
And debilitating, and that had never been a part of the plan. And so my husband's from Sweden, and so he'd never lived in the States, but we relocated to the Washington D.C. area, which is like a whole thing, like it's a whole experience.
It's a whole,
right?
absolutely.
Like, I'm not from here. And, so wow, it was a lot for a long time, and it took me. It's just been such a journey. And I call it my desert to mountaintop. You know, like my desert was that moment of self-abandonment, and then we're big hikers in my family, so everything always goes back to like hiking and the trail. And like, I just picture myself like walking this trail, like climbing, like getting so tired and parched and laying down, taking a break, getting back up. And I think that that's what life really is, you know, and journeying to that mountaintop of self-love, like reclaiming my voice. And so a lot of the work the inside work that I have done has been about reclaiming my voice, standing in my power, making sure that I understand first and foremost that there is room in my story for more than one hero. I call it the Shero's journey. Like,
the Shero?
I get to be the Shero in my story too. SEAL Team 6, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? Jess Buchanan is a badass, and she can, she's
Amen.
the Shero too, right?
Own it.
So, right.
Yeah.
It takes a really long time to like navigate through all of that. So,
particularly with all the trauma.
Yes.
Because you definitely could have folded the other direction. We know about PTSD and the impacts after war and coming back and combat, and it's really hard to reintegrate, much less persevere, which it sounds like you've done.
Yeah, and I'm lucky because I have resources, and I have a wonderful supportive partner, and my family has been incredible, and I have been given everything I need in order to rebuild a life and to be successful. And so that whole part of ignoring my intuition is so fundamentally important to me in terms of my experience and that trajectory. And so now I'm really on this mission to help women reconnect with themselves, find their voice, and then to use it.
Absolutely.
And to get paid for it. Because, right, like we can,
I love that.
we can talk until we're blue in the face.
Right.
But the bottom line is, you know what? You should be compensated. So
Absolutely. I love that you said that. People are so shy about talking about money.
Oh, I'm not.
Why? Yeah,
because it's a worthiness thing. We don't think that.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
So I think we don't think that we're worth it. Like we're embarrassed to ask
Should
for
we
what
ask?
we're worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, should I discount my fee? Like,
Right.
So because I wrote we ended up writing a book, and we wrote it so we would have an account for our son, and there were a lot of people that think that I knew we would never get to meet, and so we wrote Impossible Odds, which then ended up on the New York Times bestseller list, which was
awesome.
Amazing, right? And so
Congratulations.
that did launch me on this path that I didn't even know existed in the professional speaking circuit and speakers bureaus, and so I've spent the last 9 years really sharing my story, refining my story, figuring out like what those takeaways are because what I have come to understand is that people, like, an interesting story is just an interesting story, but people want to become a part of that transformation.
Yes.
And they want you to teach them how to be transformed. And so I've been able to do that with my story, I think largely because I'm a teacher.
Right. That comes naturally to you.
It does. And I'm trained to do that. And so now what I do is I work with women who want to move into the professional speaking world. And you've got to write a book if you're interested. So I help them develop their themes and their messaging so that they can write I call them memoir manifestos.
Ooh.
You've been through something, now you know something, and now you have a list of guidelines and values and declarations that have transformed you, and you're ready to teach other people how to be transformed. So I help women package all of that into a book so that they can use that to launch their speaking careers or their podcasting careers or whatever it is they want to do.
You're giving back.
I'm trying.
You're giving back.
But it also gives me so much. Like, there is just this feeling of alignment where
it feels right.
feel so empowered
Yeah.
to be able to use what I've learned to watch. I get to work with the most incredible women who have like bonkers amounts of courage and tenacity and determination that I have never had. I mean,
don't sell
I'm
yourself
not
short.
into like comparative trauma and all of that, but I mean some of these women's stories that I have the immense privilege of sitting witness to and helping them figure out how to talk about it and how to make a living from it. It's just it's such an honor.
Jessica, you talk a lot about change. We've certainly been through a period of change these last 2 years with COVID. I imagine the type of questions that are coming at you are from the experiences that people are going through as a result of that. What type of issues do you believe people are dealing with in the face of this unexpected change, and what advice have you been giving them?
Change is hard, right? We don't like change.
No.
We're such creatures of habit.
Who moved my cheese?
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing with change is that you can't escape it.
Yes.
Like, it is
change is the only constant.
Yes, it is part of the human experience, and we can look to history, we can look to nature. Like, it's, we're recording this in the spring. Like, everything's changing right now. Every day I get up and something is different. The last couple of years have been extraordinary in the experience of change, and I think that change is really, it's an opportunity.
Okay.
Like, opportunity is knocking on your door. We have seen, to use the most overused word of 2020, pivot.
Yes.
Right? But like, such an opportunity and so much like ingenuity.
Yes.
And creativity. Right?
And how everybody rose to the challenge so quickly. The teachers teaching my kids.
Oh my goodness.
Virtual, even PE. But they actually did a good job.
And
it was amazing how we adapted.
I just read something in the Post, they were highlighting several people who lost their jobs or they stopped working because they were trying to homeschool their kids at the same time. And then out of that change came a new business.
Yes.
And now they're like, have the top 3 bakery in the district or,
Exactly.
whatever. I do believe that, with every ounce of my being, and it's hard, like, it often comes in times of crisis. Oftentimes change chooses you. You don't get to change it, right? But it is an invitation to collaborate.
An invitation to collaborate.
Yes, and that collaboration is what it's all about.
Interesting.
That is what's going to lead you to your life's purpose. Like, I cannot be on this earth if I don't believe that what I'm doing is my purpose. And so many of us, I think, were like on the hamster wheel. We were like doing the thing. We were like
checking the checklist.
Ho hum.
Right.
And bam, we got hit with a pandemic.
Yes.
And then it made us stop and pause and think, like, is this really what I want to do with my one and my precious life?
Exactly. We needed a shakeup.
We did.
It's almost like, I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are multiple silver linings, even families coming together.
Yes.
Oh, wow, I'm getting to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my family.
Yeah.
What a novel experience. When would this have ever happened in this lifetime?
Yeah. So I think it's an opportunity. And so that's what I tell people. Like, you have to always look for the light. And I mean, Amanda Gorman says it, right? There's always light if we're brave enough to find it. And it's there. The opportunity is there. That's the whole point of the change.
I'd like to ask you one last question, and that's about your faith. As I'm hearing your story and you're praying to this star that was your mom, how much of you believes that your prayer was answered? I mean, obviously it was answered, but like, did all of these things happen because somebody out there heard you? And how much did your faith play into you getting through this?
Like, all of it.
All of it.
All of it. And my faith, faith evolves and it changes and it looks different.
Did it shake at any point where you're like, I'm angry? I'm angry at God. Why am I here?
I was really angry at God before the kidnapping happened because I'd lost
That's
my mom
interesting.
very suddenly.
Yeah.
And very, I mean, if I can use this, like, unnecessarily. Like,
Sure.
It was like actually a malpractice thing. Like, she died very young. It shouldn't have happened. And so I remember the last conversation I had with my dad on the phone when I was in Hargeisa right before I left for this trip. I said, God and I are taking a little break.
You said that?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I got kind of thrown. I got schooled.
You got
schooled. I got schooled. Like, I got thrown. Well, and so it's so interesting. So, like, just this final point. I forgot about that dream.
Yeah.
I like totally shut it out until right around Christmas while I was out there.
The premonition dream.
Yeah, I forgot.
Okay.
Like, totally blocked it out. Didn't think about it. And then we are like out in some area out there, like, while we're being held. And it was the only time we were taken to any kind of structure, and it was like a goat pen.
Oh, my.
Okay, like, it's nomadic. There's goats, there's camels everywhere, everything. And so I'm like kind of in this shelter. I'm sitting on the ground, like on hay. And at some point, somebody brings me my work bag to try to cheer me up. And inside my work bag is a Kindle. And it still had the battery was charged.
No way.
Yeah, and they let me have it for a little while, and I was like, this is amazing. I have something to read. So the two things that were on it were Freakonomics.
Okay.
And the King James Version of the Bible. And so I was like, I feel like the Bible is a good thing to read right now while I'm like knocking on death's door every day. And I was like, it's almost Christmas, so let me read the Gospels. And so I started in Matthew, right? The account of
I was going to ask you where you started.
The birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I get to this part where Joseph, an angel comes to him in a dream to warn him that they need to flee because Herod is after baby Jesus. And all of a sudden, it is like, bam, in my face.
It comes right at you,
and I'm like,
the dream.
I had a dream. And then I look around and I'm like, that's a manger right there. Like, I am sitting in a stable. I am literally leaning against a manger, sitting in a Somali version of a stable.
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's a sign, if there ever was a sign.
I will never abandon myself again. And I was like, okay, God, if you get me out of this thing alive, I am on a mission to make sure I will never do this again. I will never ignore you. I will never ignore myself. And I will make sure that I preach that gospel all day long.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I'm doing.
I love it. Thank you so much. I can't tell you what this has meant to me, and I'm sure to the audience. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have you here.